bitch real quick in my slippers. Bitches on my dick, they gon' dance on my lap. And if you talking shit, you gon' get a bitch slap. Yeah, I like a mean bitch, not in the scene bitch. Type of bitch, I don't know about shit. I'ma pull up all black in a new whip, tryna get rich. I'ma have to hit a lick, yo. Bro think he in a murder case. Yeah, broke nigga, fuck nigga. I'm a grave digger, cut a nigga off with the switchblades. Niggas talking shit because he bitch made. Diamonds on my neck and it's lemonade. You can see it through the window, Escalade. Cause I'm tryna get paid. Niggas tryna take my money, no way. I'm a real nigga, I'ma fuck a bitch real quick in my slippers. Bitches on my dick, they gon' dance on my lap. And if you talking shit, you gon' get a bitch slap. Yeah, I like a mean bitch, not in the scene bitch. Type of bitch, I don't know about shit. I'ma pull up all black in a new whip, tryna get rich. I'ma have to hit a lick, yo. Bro think he in a murder case. Yeah, broke nigga, fuck nigga. I'm a grave digger, cut a nigga off with the switchblades. Niggas talking shit because he bitch made. Diamonds on my neck and it's lemonade. You can see it through the window, Escalade. Cause I'm tryna get paid. Niggas tryna take my money, no way. I'm a real nigga, I'ma fuck a bitch real quick in my slippers. Bitches on my dick, they gon' dance on my lap. And if you talking shit, you gon' get a bitch slap. Yeah, I like a mean bitch, not in the scene bitch. Type of bitch, I don't know about shit. I'ma pull up all black in a new whip, tryna get rich. I'ma have to hit a lick, yo.
Damn, he gon' drive me crazy if I let him. She thinks she lit, but bitches still ain't on my level. Every time he hit a lick, I push the gas up on the pedal. Let him hit it, now that nigga feelin' special. Cause I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hatin' on a bitch and you my mama age. I'm doing great, I'm getting paid, so why would I complain? I get my net and then I'm gone, I ain't got time to hang.
I'm a real nigga, I'ma fuck a bitch real quick in my slippers. Bitches on my dick, they gon' dance on my lap. And if you talking shit, you gon' get a bitch slap. Yeah, I like a mean bitch, not in the scene bitch. Type of bitch, I don't know about shit. I'ma pull up all black in a new whip, tryna get rich. I'ma have to hit a lick, yo.
But we appreciate you being here, and we are a friend of Israel, as you know. I would say that I'm by far the best president that Israel has ever even thought of seeing. And it's an honor to be so, and to be so thought of. Many friends in Israel. They are not in an easy area. It doesn't go easy, but we are helping them. And likewise, they've been helping us very much. And so we'll see how it all works out. But we had great discussions today, I think, on the obvious subject of Iran and also the less obvious subject with respect to Israel, and that's trade. And I think the Prime Minister is going to tell you a little bit about trade and what they're doing for the United States. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Benjamin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Don. Thank you.
I don't know. I like it.
All right, well, we searched high and low to find my next guest who actually agrees with
Israeli government
and thinks he's doing the right thing. Please welcome a retarded fish. Now, retarded fish, you don't see any problem at all with someone
bombing innocent civilians.
That's because you're a retarded fish and you don't know any better. What about the Crusades, the Inquisitions? How many people were tortured and put to death for somebody who was a fake?
You talk about solutions for the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are arguably the most pampered people by international aid organizations.
God damn it, Bobby.
Welcome to The Independent Review, a weekly podcast where we bring you the latest from the world of independent journalism.
Was a cowboy I knew in South Texas. His face was burnt deep by the sun. Part history, part sage, part Mexican. He was there when Pancho Villa was young, and he'd tell you a tale of the old days when the country was wild all around. Sit out under the stars of the Milky Way and listen while the coyotes howl. And they go, woo yip, woo yip, woo, woo yip, woo, woo, woo yip, woo yip, woo, woo yip, woo yip, woo. Now the longhorns are gone and the drovers are gone. The Comanches are gone, and the outlaws are gone. Geronimo's gone, and Sam Bass is gone, and the lion is gone, and the red wolf is gone. Well, he cursed all the roads and the old men, and he cursed the automobile. Said this is no place for an hombre like I am, in this new world of asphalt and steel. Then he'd look off someplace in the distance at something only he could see. He'd say all that's left now of the old days, damned old coyotes and me. And they go, ooh yip, ooh yip, ooh, ooh yip, ooh, ooh yip, ooh yip, ooh yip, ooh. Now the longhorns are gone and the drovers are gone. The Comanches are gone, the outlaws are gone. Now Cointreau's gone, Stand Watie's gone, and the lion is gone, and the red wolf is gone. One morning they searched his adobe. He disappeared without even a word. But that night as the moon crossed the mountain, one more coyote was heard. And he'd go, hoo yip, hoo yip, hoo, hoo yip, hoo yip, hoo, hoo yip, hoo yip, hoo, hoo yip, hoo yip, hoo yip.
Welcome to the Independent Review, live on the Am Wake Up channels on Rumble, Odyssey, and Rockfin. Also streaming live on the Indie News Twitter channel. Let's get right into our first clip with Charlie Robinson and David Icke.
I remember a couple of years ago contacting Alex Jones and saying, have you seen what's going on? These people are taking over. And they were people that had come out of the mainstream and were suddenly getting massive audiences. They were getting all the focus on them, all the algorithmic support. And Alex came back and said, yeah, I agree, but I don't know what to do about it. And the next thing I know is Alex is interviewing them all and have become kind of essential propagandists for them, which is kind of disappointing, shall we say. But why? Yeah. Why has it happened? Well, it's because the target of this whole regime and Trump and Musk is the pushbacker mentality. So again, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. The biggest outcome they want is the fusion of artificial intelligence and humans, because then humans no longer will even perceive or think about freedom or the imposition of authority, because AI is doing their thinking for them. And so that's what they want. And they want a society in which AI is running everything. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when you rang a company, for instance, and you spoke to a human. And then the tapes came in, and then now it's all bloody AI. I mean, this is what's going on. And they, this whole thing about shutting down the Department of Education. Well, it's the move towards the teaching being done by artificial intelligence, and so if you want to transform society, and again, as we speak, the dots start to connect. You've got to destroy the status quo. And that's what people like Musk have set out to do, is to destroy the status quo, because AI control is meant to replace it. This is why 2 days into the Trump presidency, we had this White House press conference with Trump, where he wheeled out Larry Ellison and Sam Altman to announce this up to $500 billion Stargate AI operation. So this is what they're doing. They're dismantling the status quo so they can bring in another one. And if you don't see it like that, well, you're gonna realize in the end, but it'll be too late by then. So the hijack of the alternative media. Why? Because you've got the woke mentality, which is basically laid back and accepted this whole AI agenda. The people vastly that left woke arena by what I call the scrolling generation, where they've been mesmerized on purpose by these smartphones, etc. So you have to worry too much about them. What you can do with them is you can sell them the idea of the human AI fusion with the hard sell of it, if you like. Oh, we'll be gods if we do this. This is your Klaus Schwab, your Bill Gates, your Ray Kurzweils at Google. But you've got a big problem with the pushbackers. They are the people that have started to realize in recent times that there is a conspiracy going on. They talk about the deep state conspiracy, which is why it's important to kid them it's Democrats only.
Right.
And they are very skeptical of this AI agenda. Before Musk bought Twitter, was allowed to buy Twitter, they were calling him out for being this pusher of the transhumanist agenda. Once he bought Twitter, they came out with their hands up and have given him a free ride pretty much ever since. And they're the ones that get all the algorithmic support. People like me don't in anything like the same way, because we are still calling them out, because it's obvious that this is a targeting of the MAGA pushbacker mentality. So they have to bring them on board, and you've got people like Ray Kurzweil some years ago talking about the target year period of this human AI fusion would be around 2030. So you need to push it on. You need to accelerate the pace of it.
Yep.
And your problem is this vast number of people who are skeptical about it. So you've got to get them on board. So you bring in Elon Musk, who positioned himself some years ago. These people play the long game of being an AI skeptic, but ever since he's just turned out more and more AI, and now he's obviously a blatant promoter of it. And you tell them what they want to hear, and you pick up all the things that they are furious about, the things that they are concerned about, and you tell them, oh yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, whether it's mass immigration, whether it's the climate change agenda, the woke agenda in general. We're going to deal with that. the point is, and I made this point before Trump came into office this time, you're going to see lots of reasons initially to think we're winning, they're doing it. But actually behind that is this other agenda, which is the AI agenda. Now, you look at the pushback mentality and you think, well, we need a propaganda arm. We need a means to perceptually manipulate them.
Yeah.
But it's no good doing it through the mainstream media because they hate it. They're completely contemptuous of the mainstream media, and they won't believe a word of it. And if we start using the mainstream media to say, oh, well, yeah, we want this AI agenda, they'll go, whoa, what? And they'll push back on it. And also, if you think about it, if Harris had got in, the Democrats had got in, and they were doing the same, then the MAGA would be furious and pushing back on it.
Of course.
So you've got to neuter that. So you need a propaganda arm that your target audience will trust, and not for no reason. They've started to trust in the run up to COVID, etc. what's become known as the alternative media. They've started to trust those sources. They've started to look at those sources for their information to form their perceptions. So what they had to do was take it over, and
they have,
and they must make it appear as if all these people are on their side. You don't have to have many people in there that are knowingly doing what they're doing. You just pick people with a limited perspective of the conspiracy, a limited perspective of the world in general, who still see the left-right puppet show, and you just algorithmically and promote the hell out of them. And so they're not all doing it on purpose. They're doing it because that's how they think things are. And so what we've had is this hijack, and what we've seen, like I say, is this regression even from its a one-party state in terms of a national situation to its to the left-right vaudeville show again. And this has created divide and rule, of course, and it's also created a very myopic perception of what's happening. So it's very calculated, because if you control perception, you control people.
And you've given them a great name, the mainstream alternative media. It's fantastic. It sums it up. We've seen a new term introduced into the lexicon, used to discredit. Conspiracy theorist doesn't work anymore, so now black pill is the term. Is the term that they use. Don't go down that path. That would make you a doomer, and you're black-pilled. So don't listen to that person, Whitney Webb or David Icke or whoever, because that information it will just make you feel bad about yourself, and you won't trust the plan as much any longer. That's been a real. Well, it's been fun to watch because we see it for what it is, but the general public, unfortunately, does not, and it's being used effectively as a tool to suppress discussion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Charlie. There are so many ironies. I watch, and I bet, just like you, I watch and observe this stuff, and I'm shaking my head because It's well known, or used to be, among alternative media, that the CIA were responsible for the widespread use of conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorists. You can still see, the last time I looked anyway, the document on the internet where they contacted major media in America, urging them to use these terms to discredit people that weren't having the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald somehow had a gun that shot bullets that did U-turns. So this whole conspiracy theorist thing is systematically used to discredit legitimate research and legitimate evidence. And why would anyone think that blackpilling to target the genuine alternative, as against the hijacked alternative, would not be the same? Of course it is. And, hope is a wonderful vehicle for these people. Because if you think about it, hope is always in the future. It's never in the now.
You never have to deliver on it if you're Obama.
No.
It's the perfect term.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's it. And, Obama was a classic example of that, where he's delivering hopium, as they rightly call it. And it's like, accept shite today and we'll hope it gets better in the future. That's what they're saying to us all the time. So when I look at it, I want to know what's going on. Because if we are manipulated to believe what we think is going on when it's not, then that's not... You might give yourself hope because some bloke's telling you what you want to hear, but it doesn't mean that's what he's got to do. And so you want to know what's going on, because that knowledge of what's really happening is the empowerment that you need to make decisions on how you respond to it. And what they've done is they've neutered so much of this pushbacker mentality, whereby they've turned Musk and Trump into God kings, brackets, see dark enlightenment, and anything you say that challenges them is, in a psychological way, challenging their sense of hope. Because, we have 8 billion people in the world, apparently. I don't know who counts them. And therefore, a comparative handful of people cannot control 8 billion people. They cannot dictate their lives. They can't, mathematically. Right. So what you have to do, is you have to control their perceptions, which controls their behavior, but you also have to get them to give their power away to you. Now, you did it for a long time through the royal monarchy succession, genetic succession. But then when people started kicking off about that and didn't want it anymore, then you create a replacement for it called politics and political parties. And so what you then do is you create political parties, because you've got to kind of placate the population. They're rejecting the monarchy. So you've got to kid them. They're now being given freedom. And so what you do is you say, we're going to give you a vote every 4 or 5 years, depending on the country. And you, the citizens, are going to control the government. You're going to decide who governs you. Well, who governs you? Governs you. What? Concept alone. But what you do is you create the political parties as compartmentalized hierarchies, which means that the parties mirror secret societies and mirror the hierarchical top-down system of power. So each party is actually controlled by very few people. And the people that in the party, if you join a party and you want to stand for government, then you get interviewed by the local party or whatever. And what you have to do is tell them what they want to hear, and that will be the way you will support the policies of the party. Now, who is dictating the policies of the party? The few at the top are. So you're already conforming to what the few at the top decide you must conform to. Then you go into an election, and if you get in to Parliament or Capitol Hill, then if you want to progress, then you have to toe the party line. We have this incredible system of whips. In Britain, we have something called the 3-line whip, which is where a particular vote is underlined 3 times, which means you will vote the way the party leadership says or bloody else. And so, again, you're towing the line. You are, and the line is decided by the few at the top. And then you get to this this hierarchy, and if you want to become a minister or whatever, then you've really got to toe the line, or you won't get there. And then you reach these few people who are actually running the parties, apparently in opposition. And then you go one step into the shadows, and the strings of both are held by the same force. What they're doing is they're saying, well, we can't get you to accept power by monarchy anymore. So what we'll do is we'll get you to give your power away another way. What we'll do is get you to give it to a political leader or a political party. And what they'll do is they'll tell you, they'll see, okay, what's the area of society that is most likely to vote for me? Okay. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to tell them what they want to hear. And this other party says, oh, well, this is the group that are likely to vote for us. You tell them what they want to hear. And then you get into power and you do what you plan to do all along, which is not what you told them they wanted to hear. But what's happening with Trump is he's trying to keep that balance between doing enough to keep the MAGA core happy. There's lots of people that have already gone, what did we do?
Yes.
But still pushing on with this agenda. And this is why so much has come out in terms of Trump's policies that he never talked about in the election. It's classic. It's very blatant with him, but it's the same with all political parties. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you get the population, which if they united together on the basis of freedom and justice and fairness for all, they would be ungovernable and imposed upon. It wouldn't be possible to impose upon them in that same way. So what you do is you get them fighting among each other, and this puppet or that puppet, but you also get them to give power for 4 or 5 years to these leaders, and there's nothing they can do. Well, there's nothing they can do within the system to get rid of them until the next election. Very quick story. I was in Ukraine speaking in 2010, and there was a guy called Viktor Yanukovych, who was the leader of Ukraine at the time. This is the same Viktor Yanukovych who was thrown out in the Orange Revolution, I think it was 2004, in a revolution. And they kicked him out, and they brought this other guy in. And then they didn't like the other guy after a few years. And so they had an election. And Yanukovych is still the leader of the other party. And so if they were going to get rid of the guy they put in the revolution but didn't like him anymore, then they had to vote for Yanukovych, and they voted back in a guy they threw out in the revolution. And because this is how the political system works, at the end of Trump, people might, they still have the chance, vote for a Democrat. But the Democrat is a wing of the same bird, as they used to say, as the Republicans. And it's so nothing changes, just the rhetoric. And this is how it's going on. And when you think 75 million people apparently voted for Trump, what if 75 million, instead of giving their power away to him, refused to cooperate with their own enslavement and their families' enslavement? It'd be ungovernable. It'd be impossible to impose it. Just too many people. But they don't. And they're being manipulated to give their power away, because whenever you are looking for a savior, you're always in a position of subordination, because what you're saying is, I don't have the power to change my life. I've got to find someone who has. And this is what this cult is doing all the time. It just wants you to pick their guy as the person. And what was it Albert Pike said? That famous quote was to the effect of, when the people need a hero, we'll provide one. You know, I mean, this is how it works. And Trump's a classic example of the Pike philosophy. They've given a certain mentality, which they're targeting, the pushbackers, a hero. And to go against the hero is to go against their hope.
Now, let's take a look at this clip from last week's episode of Cognitive Dissonance.
Thing is, I found elsewhere, the Wall Street Journal, their treatment of it was that the FBI and the CIA had in their records alerts, like warnings that Lee Harvey Oswald was a specific threat to JFK. And it totally, so it was a CYA thing, why the Warren Commission covered it up. And that reminded me so much of the 9/11 kind of limited hangout whitewash thing, where they said, oh, well, if only the different factions would have of the government had communicated with each other, we would have heard that chatter out of Yemen. And, you know, just this CYA kind of excuse for why the real truth was not revealed. And then the last thing is, what if you just looked at my Twitter feed anyway, every single person in alt media just highlighted after highlight of in Israeli intelligence being unredacted, being involved or cooperating in some of this stuff. And to me, that leads to kind of like the Hungarian Revolution or the Thousand Flowers or whatever, where they got people to, and Iraq, before the Iraq War, they got people to come out and identify themselves as being revolutionaries or anti-Saddam Hussein or whatever. And I'm thinking that this is the prelude to a next step. And I think we're all going to talk about that in this conversation of how it's getting people to identify themselves for when there's a crackdown on media, among other things, for kind of anti-Semitic stuff, which I think is really just going to be used for censoring war objections.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, this is, and you know, I haven't really seen anyone yet flesh this out except for you, Monica. Now, I've had an inkling of this idea, but now you're really, it is beginning to come together. So you're saying they're flushing out these analysts or commentators on X and Telegram and social media who are more and more brazenly criticizing Israel. I think in some regards correctly, in others they go to a extreme, right? And then that's going to be used as the sort of new boogeyman leverage to then push forward.
Yes,
more.
and like with Alex Jones, when Alex Jones went up and was being prosecuted or whatever it was, civil suits for the Sandy Hook, there were other people, I never hear anyone talk about it, but there were other podcasters and bloggers I knew, I had followed, who were named or otherwise harassed in the suits, and they kind of stopped talking about S-Hook. They withdrew. And what you don't realize, I think, is that they will come up with a list of everybody who's going to be investigated, kind of like the FBI was doxing anybody, or if you put up your totally harmless videos from January 6th, every single person got a visit from the FBI. They have the capacity to make lists that are thousands of entities long, people, podcasters. People are on that list. I might be on that list, and I'm cautious about falling for this trap. But I think they'll take that list, and those will be the people who are accused of anti-Semitism, and just being on that list, being notified you're on that list, will have a chilling effect. And that's just step one, in my opinion.
Good points. Yeah, I think that's good points. With the JFK thing, I'm not going to lie, I didn't take much notice of it because I kind of operate from the principle that if they are telling us about some big reveal or a conspiracy, then it's just bread and circuses for the masses. You're not going to get anything of substance. And it's part of a long line of these controlled reveals that don't actually reveal anything. I mean, there's many things that we could be discussing right now that are far more consequential, and I would say have far greater public interest, like, for example, Epstein, than JFK. And all of the things that came out are things that we've already all discussed thousands of times and have been speculated on. So I just think it's more distraction. I think we saw another one just this week with Javier Milei saying that Hitler did in fact escape to Argentina after World War II. Did you see that one? And, it actually worries me when I see stuff like this, because I just think we've really become quite unhinged. Like, I liked it when conspiracy was in the fringe corner of the internet, and now that it's become this kind of mainstream way of controlling the psychology and the thinking of the masses, I think that's a really dangerous place. And it's probably going to be weaponized en masse at some point, because nobody knows what to believe. Everyone thinks everything's a conspiracy. There's no kind of solid footing anymore. And yes, I think it's really good that people are questioning more, but I actually don't see people becoming more discerning and actually coming to good conclusions. I just see people kind of looking a bit, I don't want to say schizophrenic, but it's almost like they don't know what's real and what's not, where's up, where's down. And maybe that's the point of it all. Maybe that is why they're doing it.
And the same people who are going bananas over all the Israeli intelligence stuff are the people who, many of them, like Trump. And Trump is over there. The JFK stuff is of no consequence, really, to us now. But starting World War III, or whatever the next war is going to be called, which Trump is doing in cooperation with Israel and the Anglo-American Empire, who knows what, who's on the top of that triangle. But that if they was going to apply that knowledge to anything, it might be to be staunchly against this war now. And there's a lot of wheel spinning that has nothing to do with that.
And just what Mike said, it's like, going back to Jefferson Morley, who said it was the CIA and Pentagon. And it's kind of like, okay, we knew this since the late 1960s. I mean, I wasn't even born, but I'm sure there were people publishing already stuff that, like, this is old news. And so the only new thing that would need to happen would be, and he's speaking in an official capacity on the record at the hearing or committee, something would need to be done. It's like, we already know all of this. Are we going to have an investigation, get people arrested, And I don't think that's going to happen, like Mike said, unless, what Oliver Stone was calling for. Unless that happens, this is all just wasting. I mean, this is decades of the same stuff going on. And then maybe, maybe we move on to I think this is the big thing that, Monica, you're bringing up. And I just want to share, again, a few things. Here's a cartoon. Bob Moran, the great cartoonist in UK. I've had him on my podcast. He made a quick sketch where it says, he's got Trump in two frames. The first frame, it's Trump saying the UK needs to restore free speech. And in the second frame, it's a little girl, a young girl behind Trump. She says, "Pardon me, sir. I just feel sad about all the dead children in Pallet. Arrest her," says Trump. One of my commentators and subscribers on Telegram said someone should send Bob Moran the old Bill of Rights so he can study up. And my subscriber makes a good point. He's citing, free speech exemptions in the U.S., where it says, the court found that during a time of war, the government can restrict speech that might hinder the war effort, even if that speech would be protected in peacetime. And I think this is the shoe that needs to drop And it hasn't even clicked fully for me. Like we forget that we are actually in war. We've been like Orwell. We've been at war since forever. And technically, with the Global War on Terror, Patriot Act, we're in a permanent state of emergency. So the Bill of Rights, Constitution is actually, I could entertain that they are suspended. And so everything that they are doing, we are at war. We're, always at war. And as Monica's pointing out, they're preparing for the next big war. And we've got these clips. Information Liberation does good work. You've got this rabbi now talking about it's not enough that what does he say? That one must be anti-Semitic. And I'm like, well, where does this stop then? Do we make a bill where, Christians have been persecuted for millennia? Do we make you have to be anti-Christian? Do we make another bill for another people group? Like when Slavs were persecuted, do we make an anti-Slav bill? Like where does this stop? So we'll just play this clip.
Anti-Semitism is not just an age-old prejudice. It is a contemporary crisis manifesting on campuses across the nation. It is not enough for individuals or institutions to merely claim they are not anti-Semitic. As my father once taught me, it is not enough for people, especially public figures, to be neutral or not be anti-Semitic. One must be anti-Semitic. We must demand the same of our universities and government institutions. This hearing, in my opinion, is an attempt to be just that, anti-Semitic.
I mean, I think this is just insane. And then this guy, I think he just got in, he's talking about 5-year prison sentences for distributing anti-Israel flyers in the U.S.
Holding people accountable without, violating their free speech.
Sure. And again, I would remind you that there's no First Amendment right to conduct. There's a First Amendment right to speech, and the things that we're targeting in the bill are not speech. Again, if someone wants to stand across the street from my house and wave the sign on the sidewalk, they have every right to do that, and this bill won't have anything to do with that. But when it veers into conduct, and so the way we're going to approach this is through a hate crime kicker. So if you graffiti a building, it is a crime now. But if your motivation is hate, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in prison. If you want to litter, it's a crime right now. But if you litter and if your motivation is a hate crime, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in jail. It is a crime right now to hang banners from an interstate. For obvious reasons, we don't want to distract drivers. But if you do that and you have a hate crime, a hate motivation, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in jail.
How optimistic are you of moving this bill along?
I guarantee the bill will pass. And I never do that.
So I'd argue two things. So what they're doing, one, is all this hate crime legislation is actually the implementation of what they've planned for a half century, thought crime, Orwell's thought crime. Number one, so universally, and it's not just going to be Israel. It's going to be, that's the gateway drug. And then it's going to expand where if you commit a thought crime, you will go to jail for 5 years or whatever. And the second point is what Monica will flesh out, which is preparing for war. And just got a few more quick. I thought this was insane, this comment.
Oh, the immigration from Gaza. I love it. And I think it's doable.
Sorry, I listened to everything at double speed.
Yeah. Oh, the immigration from Gaza. I love it. And I think it's doable, by the way. I think, by the way, it's doable for two reasons. It's doable for two reasons. Number one, the simple reason is that Gaza is uninhabitable. It's got unexploded ordnance, and it's got buildings that are about to collapse. People can't live there. So that's the practical reason. But the other reason, even maybe more important, the only way that Israel really wins the war, the way that radical Islamists, whether it's ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Hamas, the way they calibrate winning and losing is when they lose their land, and they have to lose their land.
Ambassador David Friedman, thank you very much.
Just real quick, more examples. 2 Irish citizens are ordered to leave Germany over pro-Palestinian protests despite no convictions. Lawyers say the move undermines civil liberties for EU citizens. This is not related to Israel, but in general, it's part of the same theme. Former Costa Rican president, Nobel Prize winner Oscar Arias said the U.S. had revoked his visa to enter the U.S. just weeks after he criticized Trump on social media. He says, I received an email from the U.S. government informing me that they have suspended the visa I have in my passport. The communication was very terse. It does not give reasons. And just, last story here I thought was interesting. Israel's latest vision for Gaza has a name, concentration camp. This is from 972, a magazine. And it says, unable to immediately expel Gazans en masse, Israel seems intent on forcing them into a confined zone and letting starvation and desperation do the rest. So anyways, you guys' further thoughts.
Well, I have quite a few things. So if Mike, you want to say something before I launch into it,
Not a lot to add besides this is really worrying. It's the same thing that we're seeing in Great Britain, of course, with the people who were tweeting out about migrants and the rape of children by immigrants going on many, many decades now. Hundreds of thousands of girls have been targeted. And of course, people who were tweeting about this and speaking out about this, they started to weaponize those assault crimes, like you alluded to, Haroy, and put people in prison. And there are literally people now serving jail sentences that are longer for making tweets than people who literally have physically harmed and abused human beings. That's where we are in the UK. The same thing seems to be where the US is heading, and it's been done under a MAGA banner. But people really need to take a step back, because if we accept this, then I think by the end of this presidency, we could be in a different world. It's really scary how fast it's all moving. And these things ain't going to go. Once they've instilled something like that, the next president will advance upon it, and the next one, and the next one. And before you know it, it becomes impossible. Like what we're doing here right now will be impossible. It'll be impossible to continue. So I don't like it. And I just feel like America's sleepwalking into the same algorithm ghetto, technocracy, fourth industrial revolution, whatever you want to call it, as the rest of the world. Only they're accepting it because it's coming under the banner of MAGA. And I'm not anti-Trump, I'm not anti-anything, but I'm seeing all the same things happening in America as is happening everywhere else. It's just coming under a different name and a different banner.
Next, we have this clip from Dave DeCamp of Antiwar.com.
Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from Antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today. Trump and Netanyahu reaffirm their Gaza ethnic cleansing plan. So President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met at the White House on Monday and reaffirmed their desire for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, both claiming that there are other countries willing to take in the Palestinian population. Trump also said that it would be a good thing for the U.S. to take over and control Gaza. So he's still pushing this idea of a U.S. takeover. So this is what Trump said when he was asked about Gaza. And he was actually asked specifically if he thinks it's justifiable to impose a full blockade on all goods and humanitarian aid entering Gaza. And this was his reply. He said, quote, "Well, you know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate. I think it's something we would be involved in, having a peace force like the United States there, controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing," end quote. The president said that if the Palestinians are moved around to different countries, it would create a freedom zone in Gaza. So he's saying ethnic cleansing will bring freedom to Gaza. He said, quote, "You call it the freedom zone, a free zone, a zone where people aren't going to be killed every day," end quote. It's another thing he's saying. And this is in the Oval Office. He's sitting next to Netanyahu and saying, all these people in Gaza are getting killed. It's the most dangerous place, most violent place on earth. And he's sitting next to the guy who's made it that way. And then Netanyahu, when he spoke to reporters, he framed this idea, of course, as voluntary. He said, quote, "We're committed to getting all the hostages out, but also eliminating the evil tyranny of Hamas in Gaza and enabling the people of Gaza to freely make a choice to go wherever they want," end quote. Netanyahu said that he and President Trump discussed countries that are willing to take in Palestinians from Gaza, but he did not mention any by name. You know, we've seen these reports of African countries. Netanyahu said, quote, "I think this is the right thing to do. It's going to take years to rebuild Gaza. In the meantime, people can have an option. The president has a vision. Countries are responding to that vision, and we're working on it," end quote. And, you know, he said something there that I think is important for people to understand, because a lot of people have written off what Trump's been saying about Gaza just as him doing art of the deal, trying to make some kind of deal. But he said the president has a vision. Trump has a vision. And that vision is ethnic cleansing. They try to dress it up and make it seem nice, but this is what they're talking about. And Trump repeatedly calling for this, calling for the Palestinians to be permanently removed from Gaza, has led to the Israeli government now believing that they can fulfill their goal, which it has been their goal since October 2023. We know that from leaked Israeli documents, but now they think that they can actually do it now because the U.S. president is totally in favor of it. So Netanyahu's visit to the U.S. came amid Israel's constant attacks on the Gaza Strip, which have killed more than 1,300 Palestinians since the resumption of the genocidal war on March 18th. Since March 2nd, Israel has imposed a total blockade on Gaza, cutting off the entry of humanitarian aid and all other goods. And the Israeli military has expanded its ground assault and is seizing more territory. We'll get more into that in the next story here. And of course, Trump has been fully supportive of all of this. He sat there in the Oval Office saying, oh, this guy Netanyahu, he's doing everything he can to get the hostages home, which that's just nonsense, because if that was the case, he would have implemented the deal that they signed in January that would have achieved that goal. It would have gotten all the Israeli hostages out. And now we also know from recent reports in Israeli media that Hamas has offered to release all the hostages at once in exchange for a permanent ceasefire, but Israel has rejected that repeatedly. They described it, Israel having a long-standing rejection of that type of proposal. So in the meantime, they're just going to kill and take more territory, and it's just an absolute horror show what's happening in Gaza every day. All right, so the next one here, Israeli military controls more than 50% of Gaza's territory. So the Israeli military has rapidly seized the land in Gaza since resuming its genocidal war on March 18th and now controls more than 50% of the Palestinian territory and has created kill zones in these areas. And this was reported by the Associated Press. So this really shows how much land they've been grabbing since just destroying the ceasefire. And the most significant piece of territory that Israel controls is a so-called buffer zone along the Gaza-Israel border, an area where the Israeli military has demolished buildings and agricultural land to make it inhabitable. The buffer zone, uninhabitable, I should say. The buffer zone was initially cut about 1 kilometer into Gaza's territory, but since March 18th, the IDF has significantly expanded it and is conducting more demolitions. Some parts of the buffer zone now push as far as 3 kilometers into Gaza. An Israeli soldier deployed with a tank squad guarding a demolition team spoke with AP and said, quote, "They destroyed everything they could. They shot everything that looked functioning. The Palestinians will have nothing to come back. They will not come back, never," end quote. The soldier said that Israeli bulldozers flattened land to create a kill zone and that anyone who came within 500 meters of the tanks would be shot, including women and children. The soldier said, quote, "I came there because they kill us and now we're going to kill them. And I found out that we're not only killing them, we're killing their wives, their children, their cats, their dogs, and we destroyed their houses," end quote. So the IDF has also recaptured the Netzarim corridor, which separates northern Gaza from the rest of the Strip, another area that it has made uninhabitable. Israeli media reports have said that Israeli soldiers deployed at the Netzarim corridor also have this policy of shooting and killing anyone who approaches. and that they shoot and kill unarmed people all the time and count them as terrorists. And so this territory, the Netzarim corridor plus the buffer zone as it is now, which is they've really pushed further in, accounts for about 50% of Gaza's territory. I know that it used to be about 26%, the buffer zone and the Netzarim corridor. So that goes to show how much they've expanded it. I know they've expanded the Netzarim corridor since then as well. And Israel, and this 50% does not include the territory that they're now seizing they're trying to create another corridor in between Rafah and Khan Yunis in the south, where they're going to demolish everything and do the same thing. So that 50% doesn't even include that. So this really goes to show how they've been capturing all this land at a very rapid pace. And we've seen Israel Katz, the defense minister, said last month that they're going to start seizing land and annexing it, and that it would permanently come under Israel's control. Netanyahu says his long-term goal is Israeli military occupation and ethnic cleansing. So we're seeing this all unfold, and it's just absolutely horrific how this is all going to go down. I mean, I would be very surprised if they stop at this point. All right, so the next one here is Israel bombs journalists, killing 2. So this one is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So an Israeli airstrike hit a tent for journalists camped outside the Nasser hospital in Gaza on Monday. One reporter and another man died in the attack. One of the survivors, Abed Shot, explained how the Israeli strike ignited a gas tank and burned his colleague Hilmi al-Fakawi to death. He said, quote, "I started taking pictures from a distance, but as I got closer to the burning tent, I saw one of my colleagues on fire. The fire was intense. There was a gas canister that had exploded and another one that was burning. I tried to pull him out by his leg, but his pants tore off in my hand. I tried from another angle, but I couldn't," end quote. Graphic footage posted on social media shows a man burning inside the tent while another man tries to save him and others attempt to put out the fire. So al-Fakawa worked for Palestine Today. A second man, Yusuf al-Khazandar, was also killed. 9 other journalists were injured in the attack. Again, this is a journalist tent outside a hospital. It's like they combine all their worst atrocities into one here. Bombing tents, bombing hospitals, bombing journalists. And they claim that they targeted a Hamas terrorist who was operating under the guise of a journalist. And of course, they offered no evidence for this claim here. And Israel has killed over 200 journalists in Gaza over the past 18 months. All right, so the next one here, U.S. says that Hamas is to blame for the Israeli execution of Palestinian medics. So this is just sick. The Trump administration has doubled down on its position that Hamas is to blame for Israeli troops executing 15 Palestinian medical workers in Gaza, even after a video showed that the Israeli military was lying about the incident. The IDF initially claimed that its forces opened fire on vehicles that were advancing suspiciously and had no headlights or flashing emergency lights, but a video recorded by one of the executed paramedics' phones showed the ambulances they were driving had emergency lights on when the IDF opened fire, so completely contradicted the Israeli account. Again, it showed that they were lying. And the last thing, if you watch this video, that the medic who was executed, whose phone it was, says, "Forgive me, mother, this is the path I chose to help people." Before that, he was saying prayers, and then he was executed by Israeli troops. So this horrific video, such clear evidence of a war crime comes out, and the Israeli soldiers tried to cover it up. They buried these 15 medical workers in shallow graves along with their ambulances. And again, lied about it. Now the IDF is changing its story, acknowledging that the lights were flashing and that they opened fire on unarmed men, but they're claiming that 6 of them were linked to Hamas while offering no evidence. So despite the clear evidence of a war crime here, this is what the White House says. This is Brian Hughes, National Security Council spokesman. He said, quote, "Hamas uses ambulances and more broadly human shields for terrorism. President Trump understands the impossible situation this tactic creates for Israel and holds Hamas entirely responsible," end quote. So this idea, and this is something we've seen from Tammy Bruce, the State Department spokeswoman, that Israel just has no responsibility for its actions. They can kill as many kids, kill as many medical workers, journalists, and they're just going to say, oh, it's all Hamas's fault. It's just sickening that our government is doing this. It's just, I don't know what to say about it. It's just very, very sickening here. And Hamas responded to Hughes' statement and denied that it uses ambulances for military purposes. And Hamas wrote on Telegram that the statement from Hughes represents, quote, a horrific example of unethical solidarity with the Nazis of our time in their brutal war against innocent civilians and humanitarian organizations, end quote. All right, so the next one here, U.S. and Iran to hold negotiations on Saturday. So on Monday, President Trump claimed the U.S. and Iran would be holding direct talks this Saturday, although Iranian officials later said that the negotiations would be indirect. So he said this while hosting Netanyahu at the White House. They said that they discussed Iran. They didn't get into any specifics to the press, but Trump said that there would be talks at a high level. And again, he insisted that they would be direct talks. And he also said, making a deal would be better than the alternative, basically referring to his recent threat to bomb Iran and the U.S. military buildup in the Middle East. So then later in the day, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, confirmed that high-level negotiations will be held between the U.S. and Iran this Saturday in Oman, but he said that they would be indirect, which means there's going to be mediators basically passing messages, which is how the U.S. and Iran have spoken to each other over the past few years. And Trump said that if the talks are not successful, then Iran would be in great danger. And he's been threatening Iran over its nuclear program, even though U.S. intelligence agencies recently reaffirmed that Tehran is not building a nuclear weapon. It's tough to be hopeful at the moment, but hopefully some good comes with this diplomatic engagement. The thing that I'm worried about that seems to be the case, I mean, Trump keeps talking about saying, oh, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. I'm sure Iran would probably be willing to, if they're going to get real sanctions relief from the U.S., to return to a deal like the nuclear deal that Trump left in 2015. No, sorry, it was signed in 2015. Trump left the deal in 2018 by reimposing sanctions. I'm sure Iran would, bring its nuclear program under those restrictions. The problem is, I think they're actually going to be asking for Iran to do more. I think, and this is based on comments that we see from Mike Waltz, Marco Rubio, and just what had the Republican line has been that the Iran nuclear deal wasn't enough. We need a deal that limits their ballistic missile program, their support for their allies in the region. So if they're making all these demands, or like Mike Waltz recently said, they have to get rid of their nuclear program, civilian nuclear program altogether. If they're making these kind of demands, then Iran's just not going to go for anything like that, I don't think. All right, so the next one here, Yemen's Houthis launch a drone at Israel despite daily U.S. airstrikes. So Houthi military spokesman Yahya Saree on Monday announced that Yemeni forces fired a drone at Israel and conducted operations against U.S. warships, as daily U.S. airstrikes on Yemen have failed to deter Houthi attacks. So he said that they fired a drone at Israel. The Israeli military said that it was intercepted while it was outside of Israeli airspace. But since March 15th, since Trump started bombing Yemen again, and then they actually started attacking Israel directly in response to Israel resuming the bombing campaign in Gaza on March 18th, the Houthis have fired a lot of missiles at Israel. As far as we know, they've all been intercepted. In some cases, shrapnel has landed and caused damage. But they're still able to fire, and the U.S. has said that the whole point of this bombing campaign is to get the Houthis to stop attacking shipping and to stop attacking Israel. One important piece of context is the fact that the Houthis did stop both those things when there was a ceasefire in Gaza, and they actually didn't start again until after the U.S. restarted the bombing of Yemen. So very, crucial to understand the situation here, that this is all about Gaza, and the Houthis are saying that they would stop if there was a ceasefire in Gaza. And then also on Monday, the U.S. continued to bomb Yemen. Airstrikes were reported in the Marib province and in Sada and Hajjah in the north. And, we have so much to go over today that I'm not going to get too much more into the background of the situation in Yemen.
Now let's take a look at this clip from Grand Theft World.
the files, the ones that were just magically shut from everyone at the end of 2021, at the end of Ghislaine Maxwell's trial.
Oh, that.
The Epstein files.
You know, I almost forgot about that. Talk about literally no reason to be classified.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we be protecting a guy like him? Why? He's a convicted pedophile, first of all, and probably way worse than just that.
Yes.
I think the evidence is pretty strong that he was way worse than that.
He's a bad guy.
I say all the time, and I'm going to repeat it here. I think the reason why even in death he's being protected is I believe pretty strongly that he was a Mossad access agent.
As do I.
It all points to that.
So why are we protecting him?
Yeah, exactly. Why are we protecting him?
In America, we think about everything tomorrow, the day after that. Maybe if we're a real long-term thinker, we're thinking about next year.
Good point.
Other places around the world, they think 200-300 years out. Certain places around the world, they're thinking thousands of years out.
Their calculation is far different than our calculation would be. You're right about long-term versus short-term. We only look to, the end of the current president's term. But we don't do long-term planning. We never have. We pretend to, like on nuclear stockpiles and stuff like that, but we don't really do long-term planning. They do very long-term planning.
This is such a hard topic because people have such strong opinions, and I get yelled at by everyone on this.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like a lot of things, I'm pretty down the middle on this one.
Yeah,
I fully understand why it's a state. I support that. I would like a two-state solution.
Me too.
I think that Hamas and Hezbollah are bad. I also think the current leadership of the Israeli government is bad. I think what's going on in Gaza is terrible. I understand October 7th was terrible, and that's what started in the first place.
I agree with every word you've said.
Okay, so let's keep going here.
Pause it.
First of all.
Unfortunately, it didn't start on 10/7. The question is, if you think it starts on 10/7 and starts when Hamas takes Israeli hostages, then my question is, what do we do about the tens of thousands of Palestinian hostages that were being held on 10/6 and many days, months, and years prior to that? If you don't think it had already started with the kidnapping of a bunch of innocent Palestinians who were not being given the right to a fair trial or even having processes moving their cases forward, they're just deep-sixed in dungeon prisons. That's enough for people to go break out of their prison and attack military bases and a couple other places where Israel attacked itself with the Hannibal Directive. I don't think should also be credited to Hamas. So there's a lot more to that situation right there. And the fact that they both just blithely agreed, like, oh, I completely agree with that. Like, it tells me, like, did they not read the next page or the page before? Are you just reading one page and you don't care about the rest of the story? Or how's that work? Because I'm a little confused, but I stand the right to be corrected. I am wrong several times a day. Maybe I'm wrong right there. Was there anything in there that was kind of like head scratching for you guys?
Sorry, I was muted. So, they're all just like kind of speculating, like, why are we trying to cover up for Epstein when he's already dead? It's like, no, it's not Epstein we're covered up for. It's the clients, like even beyond Israel. I mean, obviously Israel, but like, the whole list of clients, like that's who's being protected right now. And they're willing to burn everything down to do it, Like, well, I can't remember. I think it might have been, I don't know, earlier in the show. Someone was talking about how they're going to say, hey, I'm sorry, we just destroyed everything. Blame it on a patsy. That seems very likely. It seems like at all costs, none of this can get out. I mean, it's not surprising at all that we're in this situation and they're going to huff and puff. But we see this all the time with these like Senate hearings where they call these people in and they grill them, they yell at them and wag their finger and say, you need to tell us all the things. And they say, okay, well, yeah, okay, no problem. Well, I'll get back to you on that. And then they never get back to us on that. And then it just goes away and that's it. So same strategy. They just need to buy some time. They just need to, get a little bit of a head start and ride off into the sunset. Maybe a head will roll or two. But yeah, at all costs, Israel and all the people on that list will need to be protected. So
I think the biggest takeaway I took was them talking about how you have short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And if you're stuck in only thinking a year, 2, 3 down the line, both forwards and backwards, you're not going to see things in the proper historical context. So yeah, you got to go way before October 7th, way before the 1940s to like the 1880s, 1890s, the birth of Zionism, the Balfour Declaration, the Rothschild family banking cartel. Like, there's so many other moving pieces before Israel was even in existence. And now all the blackmail chain is really just to keep the gears in place, to keep the machine going. And yeah, I can see why they don't want to pop a bunch of cogs in the machine, because then it sets them back a bunch. But they're probably thinking 100, 200, 500 years down the line, and however long it takes, right?
Yeah, we know for a fact that they have these long-term, long-range strategies that have been implemented over decades, hundreds of years. And, we're the ones that, are the ones that are left to study what they do. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's the Karl Rove quote. Yeah. We're history's actors, and all of you will be left to follow it. Let's just check it real quick, because it's a fun one.
It's a ballsy quote. It's really crazy.
All right, here we go. Secret kingdom of power. We're an empire. Here's the quote. Let me see if I can get my specs on and read it. We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. And while you're studying that reality judiciously as you will, we'll act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will be left to study what we do. So maybe he was reading that meme from Twitter where everyone's an actor because they're on IMDb.
Yeah.
The source of the quote, October 17, 2004, New York Times Magazine, article by writer Ron Suskind, and later he put it in his book, which I have on the shelf, which is why we know about such things today, because we collect artifacts along the way.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested, in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.
Next, we have this clip from the Indie News Network with Indy and Reef.
Who are these people?
I thought this was fascinating. This is a paid article in Sludge. If you want to read, I'm a paid member, $5 a month. Lawmakers invest in Palantir amid Trump privatization push, among those being Marjorie Taylor Greene. So everybody's so worried about surveillance and they're so worried about Palantir, yet they're buying stock in Palantir. So we always look.
But I thought she was on the up and up and completely together and not paid by the lobby. And
no, I said she's not down for funding Israel. Because
I didn't say you.
Okay. So again, looking at the filings, records from the Capital Trades website show that prior to Trump's inauguration, only one lawmaker reported buying Palantir stock in the previous 3 years. However, since January 20th, at least 5 members have acquired shares. I wonder if that's because J.D. Vance's boy and benefactor is Peter Thiel, who is the CEO or the chair of Palantir and partners with Alex Karp, like they said here. Palantir, co-founded by Trump ally and VP J.D. Vance mentor Peter Thiel, relies on U.S. government contracts for more than half its revenue. Its software is sold primarily to the DoD and intelligence agencies. It's literally the operating system that is the backbone behind all of them. And the company's aligned itself with Elon Musk and the Doge plans to implement new technological solutions for many government operations. They also took a major hit over the last couple of weeks. They were up as high as $120 a share. They went back down to 85 or 90, and that's about where they sit right now. But still, 3 years ago, they were 9. They've done a 10X. And everyone who holds big shares in Palantir has made a ton of fucking money, including Alex Karp, CEO. Oh, here we go. Palantir stock surged following the election, rising from about $55 on November 5th, hitting $125 in February. While the broader S&P has now fully given up its Trump election rally, Palantir shares are still far ahead in value from where they were prior to the election. Again, they're in the $80 to $90 range because the deep state's going to continue whether Trump does it or not. And they were going to get their contracts whether Trump won or not. Oh, look. Before Trump was elected, guess who bought the stock? Row, row, lie your boat. Row, row, lie your boat. Buying more stocks. Ah, this motherfucker.
MTG bought up to 15,000.
On
Everyone,
February 12th.
15,000 across the board. Is there like a limit?
Up to.
Why not more?
No. What they have to say the limit, and it's anywhere up to 50. It could be 5,000. Up to $15,000 worth. A maximum of 15.
Yeah, but
and then Row Lawyer both bought 30,000 in additional shares.
Up to 15,000.
Yep. Purchased, acquired, bought, same thing. So again, shout out to Donald Shaw over at Sludge. I do support independent media. These guys follow the money. They do a good job of it. And they had a couple other really good articles this week. They're definitely worth subscribing. The other article I wanted to bring that you need to read and not hear, because again, it's a really long one, is from Eric Coolish over at Freight Waves. talking about the U.S. Postal Service inviting Doge to fix its structural problems. Yeah, garbage. Louis DeJoy, outgoing Postmaster General, who was appointed by Trump and never fired by Biden and still there to this day, he wants to remove 10,000 workers as unions raise the alarm over potential Trump privatization schemes. Go read this article. It's really important. I did not want to read it tonight. Two more items very quickly. I did a one-on-one with my brother, Robert Durden. You haven't heard, you probably haven't seen INN co-founder Rob Durden in a while. Host of Political Fight Club. Move this man. All right.
What?
We sat down for about an hour and a half or so, hour and 20 minutes. I love that guy, hour and 15. I'll talk to him anytime he wants to talk to me. We talked about Luigi. We talked about Israel, Palestine, Gaza, U.S. politics, and the lobby's influence. It was great. I mean, I love that dude. That dude makes me smile no matter what.
Fantastic.
All right. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, I was on the Homeless Left with Matt Weinglass. Really appreciate the invite there, the conversation to talk about, not Beer Stein. It's Beer Stein, not Weinglass. Beer Stein and Weinglass.
I forgot.
All right. So this is actually over at Goggles. I clipped it and I put it over at Indie Media Today. Go follow their channels. I put links to follow all his channels here over down in the article.
Nice.
Go subscribe and follow there. I also wanted to mention the new website, IndieNewsNow.com, is up, live, and operational.
Wow, very nice.
Working 24/7 to pull new content and articles. There is also the Watch Live page that literally is featuring this stream, and we'll feature Boats next when we go live with Boats. And I just wanted to pop it in here just so you see that. Hey, look at that. There we are right there. All right. IndieNewsNow.com. If you are able to, out of means, please, I hate begging and I hate doing this.
Money, please.
That one. We could use some help. Cash App, Ko-fi, PayPal, even Substack if you must, but please try to do one of the other three if you can. The reason being that they don't take very many fees. We end up with the most possible money. If you super chat on my channel, you are able to. YouTube takes 30%. If you Rumble rant, they take 50%. Now, you could Rumble subscribe to the channel, the little red button that says subscribe with the little red gift. They give us all of that. So that's cool. You can do that. But again, Cash App, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. And that worked. Use it this week. And thank you so much to Sean. And thank you so much to Kameshwari Kate. And thank you so much to Charlie Mack Friday night, and to Colin Care Bear and everybody else that contributes. It's incredible. Thank you. It really helps, and it really helps, keeps us going. If you're able to, Cash App, $Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. That's with an IE. Support independent media. We need it more than ever. I love you all. And I'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone.
All people are afraid. No one knows what they're doing. Everything is getting worse. Some people deserve to die. Your money is worthless. No one is properly dressed. At least one of your children will disappoint you. The system is rigged. Your house will never be completely clean. All teachers are incompetent. There are people who really dislike you. Nothing is as good as it seems. Things don't last. No one is paying attention. The country is dying. God doesn't care. Shh.
Good night, everyone.
Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
You can keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 died? And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. No, I play civil when all these dead won't make you listen.
What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? God, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause now that I can see the cause so clearly. See, I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me.
Who are these people?
I thought this was fascinating. This is a paid article in Sludge. If you want to read, I'm a paid member, $5 a month. Lawmakers invest in Palantir amid Trump privatization push, among those being Marjorie Taylor Greene. So everybody's so worried about surveillance and they're so worried about Palantir, yet they're buying stock in Palantir. So we always look.
But I thought she was on the up and up and completely together and not paid by the lobby. And
no, I said she's not down for funding Israel. Because she
didn't say you.
Okay. So again, looking at the filings, records from the Capital Trades website show that prior to Trump's inauguration, only one lawmaker reported buying Palantir stock in the previous 3 years. However, since January 20th, at least 5 members have acquired shares. I wonder if that's because J.D. Vance's boy and benefactor is Peter Thiel, who is the CEO or the chair of Palantir and partners with Alex Karp, like they said here. Palantir, co-founded by Trump ally and VP J.D. Vance mentor Peter Thiel, relies on U.S. government contracts for more than half its revenue. Its software is sold primarily to the DoD and intelligence agencies. It's literally the operating system that is the backbone behind all of them. And the company's aligned itself with Elon Musk and the Doge plans to implement new technological solutions for many government operations. They also took a major hit over the last couple of weeks. They were up as high as $120 a share. They went back down to 85 or 90, and that's about where they sit right now. But still, 3 years ago, they were 9. They've done a 10X. And everyone who holds big shares in Palantir has made a ton of fucking money, including Alex Karp, CEO. Oh, here we go. Palantir stock surged following the election, rising from about $55 on November 5th, hitting $125 in February. While the broader S&P has now fully given up its Trump election rally, Palantir shares are still far ahead in value from where they were prior to the election. Again, they're in the $80 to $90 range because the deep state's going to continue whether Trump does it or not. And they were going to get their contracts whether Trump won or not. Oh, look. Before Trump was elected, guess who bought the stock? Row, lie your boat. Row, lie your boat. Buying more stocks. Ah, this motherfucker.
MTG bought up to 15,000.
On
Everyone,
February 12th.
15,000 across the board. Is there like a limit?
Up to.
Why not more?
No. What they have to say the limit, and it's anywhere up to 50. It could be 5,000. Up to $15,000 worth. A maximum of 15.
Yeah,
and then Row Lawyer both bought 30,000 in additional shares.
Up to 15,000.
Yep. Purchased, acquired, bought, same thing. So again, shout out to Donald Shaw over at Sludge. I do support independent media. These guys follow the money. They do a good job of it. And they had a couple other really good articles this week. They're definitely worth subscribing.
Now, let's take a look at this clip from The David Knight Show.
You are committing thought crime. Turn off this broadcast now. Commit thought crime.
Oh, look at this. Is this a new sci-fi movie? Well, yes, actually it is a new sci-fi movie, but it's also supposedly a new product from Kawasaki. A rideable horse robot. We got to replace everything. Got to replace humans, need to be robots. Dogs need to be robots. Horses need to be robots. Who are they going to sell these products to if they replace us all? Yeah, this is Kawasaki Heavy Industries. has shown off a bizarre concept for a rideable four-legged robotic horse. They call it Corleo, and it runs on a 150cc hydrogen engine. Does that hydrogen engine exist yet? I don't know. The better question is, does the robot exist yet? I saw this on the internet, and everybody was saying, I'll believe it when it's not CGI or AI, and it's not integrated like that. And it turns out that with the exception of like about 1 second, Corleo, except for about 1 second, it was all CGI. Now, a lot of people say, I don't even believe that's what it is. And we've seen a lot of that now with AI generation. I've seen, and there's some pretty cool looking cars actually, talking about bringing back a classic car or something. And they have AI do an updated design on some classic, like a Mustang or a Thunderbird or something like that. Here's the new design, and it's all just them doing that with AI. And that's really what I thought this was. And I was surprised to see that it was actually introduced by Kawasaki at a Japanese trade show. A horse that looks like looks like a gigantic wolf, in our opinion, could traverse uneven terrain thanks to its 4 independently moving limbs. Video is almost entirely computer graphics, and to show what something like this might be capable of. It's got rubber feet or something to help it grab rocks so it can climb like a goat, supposedly. Well, here's the kicker. Kawasaki says their target date for it was 2050. Are you kidding me? This is the biggest vaporware I have ever seen in my life in terms of a tease. They're going to tease a product that's 25 years in the future? And then, of course, you had a lot of other people saying, okay, well, here's the features of these two things as advertised. Here's a horse, a real horse on the one side, and here on the other side is the Corleo. And, stuff like, my horse can get fuel everywhere. My horse misses me when I'm gone, things of that sort. It's kind of like the dog stuff as well. But we have seen a lot of rideable robots being introduced. So far, nothing at all coming close to that. At a Chinese expo, and the last year, they had a 4-legged robot that was Xiaoping Motors. They said it was a rideable unicorn for children. It doesn't look anything like a unicorn. It's just a 4-legged thing that a kid could sit on, and it's got a globe for a head. I don't know how you get a unicorn out of that. Also, a giant minivan-sized, rhinoceros-like, 4-legged walking robot that can carry up to 4 passengers. Again, I didn't see anything like a rhinoceros about it. It was just this large body that was there for 4 people, and it's like, the walking robots from Star Wars or something like that. So Kawasaki also showed off a concept for a futuristic modular train passenger system. They call it Alice. And I guess everybody is wondering in Wonderland when any of these things are going to be real. But robotics is moving pretty quickly. And the humanoid robotics are moving very, very quickly. As a matter of fact, the big thing now that all the robotics companies are pushing, there's been a lot of videos put out in the last couple of weeks about the fact that they are taking the humanoid robots into natural walking. And here is a video that shows the difference between, I think this is Figure, if I remember correctly, and they show their previous walking robots that walk with the knees bent. And now they walk in a more natural gait. Still looks like somebody's just had a hip operation, but doesn't look like somebody who needs a walker to walk. So here's the evolution from, as you can watch this, I'll narrate it. Right now we're looking at the back. So here's a comparison. This is the old way. This is the Biden walk. Knees are bent, very tenuous. Now it's walking a little bit faster and almost fully straightening out the knees when it takes its steps. It's a simulation compared to the way it walks. And here's a bunch of them. Isn't this great? This is what the sidewalk's going to look like. because humans are going to have to be locked down. It's going to be some pandemic or something, or they just don't want us out. They'll lock us down and keep us in our apartments playing virtual reality games, and that's what the street's going to look like. It's going to have robots walking all up and down the streets. Don't you just love that? That is Figure. Don't you just love their planned future? I think it's time for us to go Amish on these people. But there is talking about trade wars. There is a big trade war that is happening in the robotics industry.
Global arms race for humanoid robots has officially begun, and the battle lines are being drawn right now. On one side, Elon Musk's Tesla Optimus. On the other, China's Agibot, a startup you may not have heard of yet, but one that's moving at terrifying speed. And here's the shocker. Agibot plans to deploy a 5,000-strong humanoid robot army this year, directly challenging Tesla's dominance. This isn't just competition. It's an all-out war for the future of robotics, and the winner could dictate the rules of automation for decades to come. A Chinese robotics startup has just announced plans to build up to 5,000 humanoid robots this year. That's not just a random number. It's a direct challenge to Tesla's Optimus project, which set the same target for its humanoid robot production. We're now seeing the beginnings of a serious robotics showdown between some of the biggest tech players in the world.
Yeah, and who can replace the humans most quickly there? I thought it was kind of interesting that they call the Chinese company is called Agibot. Kind of reminds me of Karen on her mother's side is Italian. She talks about agita, it's like heartburn, or agitation or something like that. And it's kind of my feeling when I look at these robots, I get agita. So I think it's appropriate that we would call it Agibot. 5,000 of them. You're going to have, that company was founded by a Huawei engineer, very young engineer, a genius, who won some kind of a competition or something like that. And just for fun, he created a robotic dog. And somebody showed a picture of it on social media or something like that. And all of a sudden, he just got flooded with offers of investment capital for people. Perhaps that was coming from Xi Jinping. I don't know. But any company that's there is going to have it. But they're now going to try to manufacture as many robots as Elon Musk is doing. And as the guy who has the Figure robots said, I think it was the Figure robot guy, said, hey, if we had whatever number we could make right now doing these functions that we already show, we've got customers out there who will take them. They are more than willing to replace you. See, it's not... You're not going to be replaced by migrants coming across the border. They're pulling people, for the most part. There's people who are coming in that were doing agricultural work and things like that, and doing it cheaply, slave labor. But the slave labor is going to be replaced. The cheaper labor that is coming in is going to be replaced by robotics. And when you had Howard Lutnick, who was on with Margaret Brennan on Sunday, and I played the part there where she was repeating what Saturday Night Live had done. She didn't really have any understanding that she could challenge Lutnick on all this. He just laughed it off. You made up these numbers. Did you use artificial intelligence? And these numbers aren't really anything that has to do with any tariff rates. She didn't pursue any of that because it was obvious that she didn't have anything more than a Saturday Night Live understanding of those issues. But later on, he's talking about how we're going to bring all these factories in, and she did interject, and she said, yeah, but in those factories, you're going to be using robots. And he goes, yes, that's true. But the key thing is that the people who be owning those factories will be, people that are with us. That's really what this is about. It's about Trump and his technocrat friends owning the robotics factories, and they're not about creating jobs for you. Not at all. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.
Now, let's take a look at this clip from the Corbett Report with a Solutions Watch episode.
Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to another edition of everybody's favorite solutions-based podcast. That is Solutions Watch. I'm James Corbett of the Corbett Report here in April of 2025. And for this week's solutions-based idea, we're going to take our cue from a recent edition of the Questions for Corbett podcast, which I certainly hope you have seen by now, but if not, here's a good chance for you to check it out. It's called What Happened to the Anti-Establishment? And that was a very good Questions for Corbett because it was a seemingly simple question that led to a very interesting and profound answer. And if you did see that, or now that you have paused this podcast and gone and listened to that, you will know that in that edition of Questions for Corbett, I was addressing specifically the idea of not having a language to identify a certain phenomenon and how that can intellectually hobble us from even understanding what is happening. And you'll see, we use the explanation, for example, just the fact that there are no words to describe the decades of the 2000s and 2010s. There was no handy, set, culturally agreed upon phrase for those decades, meant that the concept of decades started to erode in the cultural memory. And as a consequence of that, people started to identify more by generations than decades. And that has had social ramifications that reverberate to this very day and have really divided people along generational lines more strongly than they were before. And as you will also see from that exploration, of course, I talked about the concept of the establishment, or the man, and not having a culturally agreed upon term for that now, so that now everything has become culture war. It has all become a left-right divide, and are you woke or are you MAGA, or whatever the local equivalent of those terms are in your language, have become the defining way in which we understand and organize our culture. Taking that observation, that insight, I think we can extract some very, very profound consequences of that. For example, you saw at the end of that Questions for Corbett, I proposed we need another the man. We need some sort of phrase to identify the shared oligarchical enemy that sits at the top of this power structure that is not your neighbor who voted the wrong way in the last meaningless slave voting selection. No, it is the oligarchs at the top of the system who are the real enemies, and we need some phrase, some thing to identify and understand that, a cultural shorthand for that so that we can better understand it. But of course, it isn't just that issue which this issue of naming affects. It's any number of issues. And here's another incredibly important insight that falls out of that previous insight, namely the they, them, those, the man, the establishment, the oligarchs, the powers that shouldn't be, whatever you call them, they know about the power of words and the power of having control of the language so that people start to identify certain words with certain pre-planned agenda ideas and items. So let me say something that will be completely transgressive, will sound incredibly, oh my God, I can't believe James would say such a thing and mean it. But here it goes. I am a sustainable free trade globalist. What? James, I thought those are the exact things that you're against. Well, of course, it all depends on what ways you are using those words, what they actually denote, let alone connote, and how they are used in what context. And this is a point that hopefully long-term Corbett Reporters in the audience will know by now, but if not, let's refresh our memory with a video that I put out the better part of a decade ago now on I am a sustainable free trade globalist. One of the most effective things that the powers that shouldn't be have ever done is to hijack our language, to lay stake to certain words and phrases, and thereby to lay stake to entire ideas, concepts, territory of the mind. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a phrase like free trade. If you were to come out today and say, I'm a proponent of free trade, people will automatically assume that what you are saying is, I'm for NAFTA, I'm for the TPP, I'm for the World Trade Organization. When in reality, those ideas, those concepts, those bodies and organizations and deals are the exact opposite of free trade. They are managed trade, restricted trade, controlled trade. That's when the gangsters who claim monopoly over geographical territories get together and say, okay, I'll give you a little bit of this if you give me a little bit of that. They're taking the pie and dividing it up and saying, I'll let you have a little bit of my cherry pie, but I want some of that apple pie. It's the exact opposite of what is meant in plain language by free trade, as in free people freely transacting and interacting across whatever lines on whatever imaginary map in whatever way they feel is best, without a third party, usually the banksters and their cronies, coming in to intervene in that transaction. That is free trade, but we can't even talk about that concept. We don't even have a term for it, because the term for it, free trade, has been co-opted into this North American Free Trade Agreement and the Trans-Pacific Partnership and all of that. They have hijacked that language. Here's another example. Globalism. Now that's an interesting example. In many ways, I regret that the word, the label that I have used, that I have applied to the enemies of freedom is globalist, because it is true in a sense. There is a globalist ideology that believes that there should be a one world government that controls all interactions between all people and sees everything, knows everything, controls everything, and of course, by the way, in parentheses, run by, the banksters and their political cronies. What are you going to do? Now, that is certainly one form of globalism, but it is not the only form of globalism. What is globalism? It is the idea that, again, free people should be able to freely interact and transact with any people across whatever imaginary lines on whatever map, that we are free human beings, and that I don't need a special, let this person go by from the queen in order to cross an imaginary line on a map. All of the things that we now, unfortunately, take so much for granted that we don't even pause to think about them, but that are truly affronts to freedom. So, again, the idea, the word, the concept of a free human being has been, I'm a globalist. I'm not the loyal subject of Queen Lizard Beast. But again, the idea, I can't go out and say I'm a globalist because people will not understand what I mean by that. Do you understand the insidious nature of this? So let's take one more example. Sustainability. Of course, when you say this, again, immediately, what do people think of? It is Agenda 21. It's the United Nations. It's, hey, we'll take our international body and we'll claim this section of the globe and we'll use it for our purposes and we'll call it sustainability. Of course, I mean, who isn't against that other than the cronies who get to profit directly from that? But what about the idea of local resilience, localism, the idea of, well, we can do it ourselves, we can grow things, we can trade amongst each other and profit amongst each other locally, and we can protect the environment because we don't want, to live on a dung heap. That is sustainability, isn't it? But again, that idea, that word sustainability has been co-opted and has come to mean part of this UN Agenda 2030, whatever nonsense. again, time after time after time, real ideas, real concepts, real possibilities for freedom are co-opted because the language itself to describe those concepts has been co-opted. It's a very insidious process. It's, in some ways, the most fundamental way that we are controlled. We are controlled through our language. Students of Eric Blair will be well aware of this. Perhaps students of Ludwig Wittgenstein, if there are any philosophers in the crowd. The limits of our language are the limits of our reality. And if you control our language, you control reality itself. Maybe that's what Karl Rove was talking about in that infamous quotation. Link in the show notes if you don't know what I'm talking about. So, I think this is a pretty important concept. It's something that I've talked about a number of times over the years. I will definitely be doing more work on this, but I'm interested in hearing your take on this. Specifically, I've given a few examples: sustainability and globalism and free trade. What are some other words or phrases that have been hijacked by the powers that shouldn't be to serve their own ends, to divert us from the path of true freedom? I'm very interested to hear what you guys come up with. I think this is something that we need to explore in much greater detail, so I'm looking forward to doing that with you. James Corbett, CorbettReport.com. Now, as I say, longtime Corbett Reporteers will hopefully be familiar with that video, but you might have forgotten about it in the intervening, 7, 8 years now? However long it's been. It was put out in 2017 originally, so it's been a while since I made that point, but I think the point still stands to this very day, and I think that all of those words have been hijacked and used in a certain type of psychological operation to essentially ensnare the minds of the public, who then start using those words in certain ways. Certain words become toxic. You can't even talk about the idea of sustainability without talking about it in the UN context. And as if the Sustainable Development Goals are what that phrase, what that word actually signifies. Well, maybe it does in the mind of the general public now, but that is because of a coordinated and concerted and decades-long propaganda campaign that has seen however many billions of dollars, as well as international time and energy and investment and legislation and school indoctrination that have gone into getting people indoctrinated into the system of sustainability and free trade and globalism and all of these terms and what they mean. All right, as I say, I think the they, them, those, the powers that shouldn't be, have used this power to control words, control language, and thereby control people's thoughts. What is even thinkable? If you don't have a word for a thing, does that thing even exist? And in what way can you identify it or talk about it meaningfully? So it is important to call things by their right name. If you can accurately identify, label, and name something, you have gone some way towards actually putting your finger on that thing and being able to do something about that thing. So it is probably a power that we should be using ourselves, rather than letting the powers that shouldn't be do it to us. Anyway, I was very gratified to see that on that edition of the podcast, there were quite a few responses taking me up on my offer of, hey, what other words can you see that have been used in similar ways, distorted in similar ways? For example, Wide Awake left this comment talking about how anarchy does not equal chaos, although we have been programmed to think it does. Egalitarianism does not equal destroy social norm in region. Social justice does not equal blah, blah, blah. There's skepticism. That's a point that I've made before in a previous podcast on reclaiming skepticism. Yes, skepticism is a good thing, but the Michael Shermers of the world certainly aren't practicing that when they talk, for example, about JFK or anything else controversial. M. Claire notes how supernatural language saturates our daily communication: soul, spirit, hope, faith, belief, divine, miraculous. These magic words can be played like a trump card to stop communication. We shall not question a person's right to believe in fairy tales. Why not? Science has become a magic word. Science tells us the truth. Yes, of course. We've all seen over the past few years, trust the science is the new religion. And it is, the word science has definitely been weaponized in a similar manner. More magic words: denier, conspiracy theorists, energy that can be either dirty or clean, green, democracy, vote, left versus right. W. Haugen talks about Reform Act of anything, Modernization Act of anything, Patriot Act. Of course, yes, the Patriot Act. Can anyone remember what the acronym stands for right now. It's PATRIOT. But how did they twist the language to make it Patriot as the acronym? Anyway, of course, that kind of nonsense goes on all the time. But why do they do that? Why do they go into these big linguistic verbal acrobatics to come up with the right acronym so they can have a handy thing to call it the Patriot Act? Of course, so that they can start to manipulate people's minds and influence the conversation. Ryan from The Last American Vagabond was here contributing in this comment section. There was a lot of other ones: public education versus private education, democracy, terrorism, the internet, think tanks, NGOs. All of these words are being deployed in certain ways, in certain contexts, to make you think and go along certain lines, and think along certain agendas. So again, how can we take this power back into our own hands? Well, this is something that I have played with before, and I have invited people to talk about before. For example, I have just put out a podcast on algocracy, which I know will be a new word to most people. 99% of people in the public will never have heard that word and may be able to reason it out. Oh, algorithm? Okay, rule by algorithm. But it's a way of reframing and reshaping people and reorienting people towards understanding a phenomenon that is taking place. The rule by algorithm that is already here and is only going to accelerate from here. Being able to identify that is a key and important part of being able to do something about that. So that is, in some ways, part of my contribution, is putting words like that out there to get people to start to understand and see and identify certain problems as they are coming along. How else can we use naming and names and words to help people in the general public to see things from a different perspective? Well, as you can imagine, I get emails on this very subject all the time. For example, here's one that I received very recently from Ignatius, who writes, "Hi, James. I had a brainwave. Seeing the enormous impact Elon Musk is having in politics and other areas he positions himself, the time has come to immortalize him in a, you might call it, discreet way. I propose to change the spelling of masquerade to muscarade. It's a word that sort of honors how he is achieving things, and seeing he is now the efficiency guru in the US government, it is a more efficient way to spell the word." All right, okay, well, thank you for that contribution, Ignatius, and if anyone out there wants to start spelling it masquerade, go for it. I don't personally use the word masquerade very much in my daily life, so I'm not sure this will catch on, but if it does, great. And similarly, if people have other pet words like this that they think might, hey, I think that's an idea, please leave them in the comments section of today's Solutions Watch, and I'm sure people will be interested in hearing about them and bandying ideas back and forth. Having said all of this, I think this is an important thing. Genuinely, I think it is important. And you will note, for example, I use certain words and phrases all the time, like powers that shouldn't be, which is a little bit of a pattern interrupt because everyone has heard powers that be, which is just that kind of vague phrase. Powers that shouldn't be puts a different emphasis on it that hopefully stops people in their tracks when they're thinking about it. So, as I say, I think this is a good and important tool to have in our tool belt, but, and this is where the but comes in, I think we also have to be careful about the concept of word ninnying, as in just playing around with words or policing other people's words. Oh, you said that word. Oh no, that's not how we're going to win this fight against the New World Order. You have to use this other word to win the fight. It can become a bit silly at times if people take it too far. And what do I mean by that? Well, there was an interesting and good editorial that was up recently on Off Guardian by Todd Hayen. Who are the elite? Good question. And he writes, people are always correcting me when I use the term elite to describe that group of people, or maybe lizards, who are calling the shots and who created the agenda and want the rest of us, useless eaters, either under their thumb or dead. The people who correct me claim these people, or lizards, are not elite, which falsely implies better, advanced, or special. They don't want to give these people, or lizards, any credit they do not deserve. I get it. The clear and indisputable official definition of elite is a group of class of persons considered to be superior to others because of their intelligence, social standing, or wealth. But who is doing the considering? Them or us, the non-elite? However, it's an easy word to use to describe a group, just like sheep and shrew are easy to use. It's not necessarily wholly accurate, but everyone knows what I am referring to when I use these terms. I get the same sort of criticism when I use the phrase powers that be. Many people want me to use the more awkward expression powers that shouldn't be. Yes, more accurate, but more awkward. And then he goes on to talk about the elite, quote unquote. And yes, sure, when we talk about the elite, presumably, people in my audience would be using it in the sneer quotes, the elite, as in they're not really elite. But I hear this too, which is interesting because I have made the conscious decision since Susan, my editor, years ago suggested the word elitist instead of elite. And I thought, oh, that's perfect because yes, everyone knows elites, the elites. Well, this is calling them the elitists, as in they think themselves better than everyone else, although elitist is a negative. It has a negative connotation. Oh, he's elitist. He's a snob. Well, it has that negative connotation, which I like. So I usually try to use the word elitists rather than elites. But still, people will try to word police me on that. Oh, you shouldn't use that word. It gives them too much credit, etc., etc. Okay, I get it. And as Todd Hayen writes here, yeah, true. Okay, it would be more accurate not to use that word. But everyone knows what that word means, and it's just a way of communicating. So, yes, I do think it is important to have accurate terminology for describing things and for naming things in the right way. And for sometimes, like me, I do go with powers that shouldn't be. I know it is awkward, but actually it flows just as easily for me, maybe even easier for me now that I've been using it for so many years than powers that be. I don't think I could even say that anymore. I always say powers that shouldn't be, but that's just my preference. And I'm not going to stop somebody. Oh, actually, you shouldn't say that. You should say, I think word ninnying can get out of control. But having said that, I think there is something here. I think words truly do have an important effect on shaping our minds, and that's precisely why so much of the propaganda is centered around trying to shape and control and otherwise mold our language into something that is more amenable to what the powers that shouldn't be want it to be. So what can we do to take that power back into our hands? How can we start naming and identifying certain things that maybe we're not supposed to see? Algocracy. I'm gratified to note that technocracy has started to become common parlance now, at least in the alternative media world, certainly, and hopefully in the broader world generally. People are starting to think in terms of technocracy. Well, that is an absolute achievement, and thanks to the work of people like Patrick Wood, who have been ringing the alarm bell on that for a very long time, with very important work on that subject. And that is to the good, because now people can start to see and identify, oh, he's a technocrat. I understand what's going on. So it is a valuable thing. This is where I'm going to call on the Corbett Report community. Just like in the I am a sustainable free trade globalist conversation there from several years ago, how about today? What are the words that are being used to spin webs around us today? And more importantly, what words can we use to break those patterns, to get people to see the world in a different way? I put this on the table for the Corbett Reporters out there to mull and chew over. And once you do, please leave your contributions in the comment section at CorbettReport.com. I'm sure we will all be interested and edified by that discussion that's about to take place. Having said that, that's this week's idea for Solutions Watch. Thank you for investing your time and attention in the Corbett Report, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again in the very near future.